Hey peeps, today we're going to be talking about working with the complete and full edition of the Witch's Tarot by Burning Paper Hearts. This full edition contains all 78 of the traditional tarot structure, and then I'm just double checking myself here, and then 9 additional archetype cards of the Sacred Feminine. So I've had about 3 or 4 of you message and ask me if I could talk about how to work with the deck as a whole as opposed to just the Majors edition. And I do have a video on working with the Majors edition of the Witch's Tarot. I will post a link to that in the description box. If I remember to, I will do my best to remember to do that. That deck I have very specific uses for, and I do talk about that in that video in detail. And so if you're more interested in working with that version of the Witch's Tarot, then you may find that video helpful. Now, while I do feel like the soul of this deck is the same energetic blueprint as the Majors only edition, I think there's a lot to working with the complete tarot package of the Witch's Tarot here. That's really juicy and fun. And so I want to talk about how I've been working with it, how I experience it, and then just give you a few ideas for if you're having trouble reading with it, some things that may help you as well. So I find that the entire edition of this deck is really sexy. And I don't just mean, yes, there is nudity in the artwork. I'm about to show you some images, and so disclaimer that I'm about to show you some naked people. But all of the nudity is artistic, and it's very much in celebration of the goddess and the sacred feminine and the beauty and power of the energy of the sacred feminine as a whole in all of her aspects, right? Which for those of us who identify as witches, we would be saying, working with that maiden, mother, and crone space as those kind of fulcrum points in the story of the sacred feminine. I do think that Burning Paper Hearts, I think that as an artist, they really hit all of those points beautifully. So the first thing I want to say is I really think you get a feel for that kind of sensuality and mystery and beauty of being the sacred feminine with this deck. And when I posted on Instagram about sharing this story, I did post that I felt like we needed Amy Winehouse, like we needed to listen to the Back to Black album while we talked about this deck, because there is like a juiciness to working with the deck as a whole that I think really comes out a little bit more than just in the Majors. The Majors only deck has a very mysterious and very mythical feel to me. This is this carries that over absolutely because your Majors are the same. But in the Minors, I feel like we really flesh out kind of the lustiness and the beauty and the mystery, and also like the dirtiness, and I mean that in the best way possible, of being in body in our journey, embracing both the sacred feminine and the earthiness of the human experience. So I'm just going to share really briefly what the deck looks like. So this is the box that the deck comes in. Right now, my Majors only deck is not here, so I cannot compare and contrast with you, but I'm sure that there are many other wonderful YouTubers who've created compare and contrast videos that you can find online with a simple search. So this is what the box looks like. The cardstock is my absolute yummiest favorite cardstock. I love the cardstock in this deck. Here is what the backs look like. Sorry guys, I do actually use this deck, and so you can see I probably spilled some tea or something on that. This is the little white book that comes with the deck. So you're gonna find a card representation here, card image representation, and then keywords for upright and reversal. Chris does talk a little bit in the beginning about what he was looking for. This deck captures the dark and mystic beauty of the female form alongside sacred symbology and strong emotional context. I think he absolutely hit the mark with his desired goal. But if you are new to tarot, you are going to want a Tarot 101 book. I recommend Tarot 101 by Kim Huggins still to this day. I love that book. I'll always recommend it to anyone. I think she just created a smash hit with that as far as if you really want to get to know tarot and you do the homework exercises, it's awesome. Here's what the inside of the box looks like for those of you who like to know those things. I'm going to put my tea stained one back. This is one of my favorite backings of all time, always will be. And this lovely like velvety matte cardstock is just my absolute favorite. And of course, black borders. Does it get better for a goth girl like me? No, it doesn't. So let's talk a little bit about working with photography as opposed to mixed media or more traditional form of Rider-Waite-Smith artwork in the deck. So the first thing I want you to pay attention to, if you feel stuck around this, when it comes to actually working with the deck and sussing out the meanings when you look at the spread as a whole, you want to pay attention to the feeling you get when you look at the artwork. I'm just going to show you a few images while I talk now. You want to pay attention to the feeling that you get when you look at the artwork, all right? When you look at the photography, and then marry that to the traditional meaning of the card, okay? So this is Six of Cups. I'm just going to speak as an example right now. Now, you might feel like, but I don't get how this is about past life connections and rose-colored glasses, looking at the past, happy memories, maybe bittersweet memories, and those type of soul connections, right? But if you notice, the female in the image has roses around her eyes. So we can apply the traditional meaning through some of the symbolism that Chris has included here. And we want to marry it to the feeling we get when we look at the photography. So for me, when I look at this, I have a sense that maybe I'm a little bit chained to something especially around throat chakra, with how her hands are crossed over throat chakra here, that I might be remembering something different than how I actually experienced it. And maybe that is affecting how I am experiencing the present moment, either with this individual or with an aspect of myself. So you see how you want to marry the traditional meanings with the feeling that you get in the imagery, and then paying attention to those subtle forms of symbolism that Chris uses here with the roses over the eyes as an example in this case. Now, I think with the court cards, he really knocked it out of the park. The court cards in this deck are very easy for me to interpret, whether I'm reading for someone else or for myself. I think you really get a feel for the energy of the specific court card, as opposed to needing to make it about a person in the querent's life or in your own life, which is positive to me, because sometimes we can get really stuck around the court cards have to be people in someone's life, and sometimes it's actually an energy that we're being asked to embrace or that we're experiencing with other people in our lives. So this Knight of Coins, to me, beautifully expresses the sense of deep connection to the earth, to ritual, that to me the Knight of Pentacles naturally has. And we see that with the flowers that our goddess here, that our witch here is connected to. There's also a sense in the blurriness of the image that perhaps we're not necessarily moving exceedingly fast, but we're moving with intention, and there's a beauty to the intentionality. And then, of course, the kind of, I think of these as halos that Chris uses in a lot of the photography. You know, there's a sense of, with that halo, a deep connection to source or to the goddess. And to me, the Knight of Pentacles or the Knight of Coins always has a deep reverence for the goddess and a deep connection to her. And that's why he's able to be more patient than the other knights. So pay attention with the court cards in this deck, working with the energy of the court card that's showing up, and not so much needing to make it about a person in your life or someone else's life. It's about the energy, right? So here's Queen of Wands. You get that feeling with the tiger here as well, that there's a little bit of a vulnerability in her position, but a really lusty connection to the wildness of the tiger. And with the sense of her being fully naked also, you know, comfortable in her own skin, right? We have Queen of Cups here. I like that in this image, we've kind of flipped the softness and the emotionality of the Queen of Cups into this idea with the antlers of, you know, what is the root of what she is feeling? That's what I think about when I look at this. You know, this queen is water of water. Yeah, so she is all emotion and intuition, but there's also a little bit of a sense of intentionality and movement here that I like, that like opens you up to exploration in a different way. And then the other thing I want to encourage you to do is look at where maybe some of the traditional meanings have been flipped on their head a little bit. Here with this Four of Coins energy, you know, this sense of protecting, instead of just straight from heart that we see in traditional Rider-Waite-Smith imagery, we're almost protecting back of heart and the crown chakra here in this imagery. So how are we trying to avoid pain? How are we trying to avoid feeling when we're in a bathtub anyhow? So at some point we're going to deal with water, and where it's going to come through is the feet in this situation. So I really want to encourage you. So, and excuse me, let me just go back for a second. If I'm looking at the feet, I'm considering that another set of chakras in the body. And so even if I'm trying to block feeling from above, I'm experiencing it from the ground up, right? And the coins, the pentacle suit is the element of earth. So as you can see, paying attention to the feelings, the images, that even like where the image takes you in your mind with your own mental imagery here. All of this is going to be really helpful for you in feeling connected to how the deck is going to work with you. So you want to be a little more open to finding your way into the imagery and connecting to the imagery. And I do think you want to really surrender to the mystery, to the femininity, to the fluidness, to the intuitive aspect of yourself as a reader and as someone who's walking a path with the sacred feminine, because why would you have bought this deck if you weren't connected to the sacred feminine in some way? You know, surrender to that and allow that to lead you through this experience with the deck. You're going to get a lot more out of it, okay? So, you know, here we have the a major represented here with the sun. I love this imagery. I love the way it feels. You know, you really get a sense of that bliss, peace, and connectedness that the sun represents. Here's an example of another minor with the Ace of Wands. And I actually have a print of this in my living room at home here. This imagery is really evocative to me. I feel like this is the witch in her manifestation power. And there's a real sense of belief in the self to work with intention to create what it is that you want to experience, and that opportunity is there. That's represented with the ace. So you want to, you know, give yourself some time and space with the imagery. It's different than working with an OG RWS deck, because we are working with photography, we're working with images, and we're specifically working with imagery of women representing archetypes here. So give yourself some time. Like what I would really recommend that you do with this deck is when you get it, or if you're really feeling stuck, take the deck out, open it up and look at all of the images together, and then write about how you feel about the deck as a whole, about specific cards, and sit with, when you look at the imagery as a whole, the story that the deck is telling for you specifically. I think that's going to help you get a lot out of it. I have very clear and easy reads with this deck. I haven't had an issue connecting with it. I love this deck a lot, and it really makes me feel very connected to the goddess. So I want to encourage you to, if you're struggling with this, don't give up on the deck, but look at the deck as a whole and look at the individual imagery. So I think that that's important. Let's see, what else did I want to say here? The other thing is, when it comes to interpreting spreads as a whole, I want to talk a little bit about how to work with interpreting the spreads as a whole. So when you are looking, I'm gonna give an example here. So when you are looking, okay, so this is good because we're getting one of the archetype cards, right? So when you're looking at your spread, this is where it can feel a little bit tricky. We have the Devil, the Death, and the Maiden card here. When you're looking at your spread as a whole, I want you to pay attention to what you see repeating in the imagery. We have a lot going on up here at Crown. This deep, earthy, rooted connection that's being asked of us, but also an opening to something new that we see expressed through the vulnerability of the positioning of the Maiden, right? She's got like direct connection to source, to higher self, but there's also a vulnerability to her precociousness, innocence, lack of wisdom in regards to past experience. Then we have this very sensual, earthy, but mysterious energy of empowerment, addiction, abandonment, and endings and release, right? So do you see how I'm marrying traditional card meanings with what I'm seeing repeating in the cards? I also really like to look at the color tonality in the imagery as well in a deck like this. And what are we seeing being repeated through the story? I just want you to look at that and to see how you see the story repeating. So if this was past, present, future, you can see that we're moving into a space of something's ended, presently being in a position of opening up to having a new experience, and then moving into a space of lust. But does that need to be tempered? Do we need to temper the devil energy, or is it an empowerment for us to now go from this open vulnerability and lack of judgment in regards to a new experience into the full expression of the experience? So let's say that we're looking for clarity on that. This is where we can pull, wow, it's all majors today, and then we have the Empress. So the wildness, the abandonment of the devil, and that lusty connection to the energy of the ram or the goat, that Capricorn energy is going to bring about an ability for us to nurture ourselves better and also to create a fertility that will lead us into the next space. So you can see how when we're looking at what we're seeing repeated, and you can see these motifs repeated in the photography. Look at the connection between the Maiden and the Empress here. So pay attention to those things and find a reference, an internal reference system for yourself that's going to help you to understand how to interpret, okay? So that's what I would offer for assistance in connecting with the deck as a whole. I know it can feel like you've bitten off more than you can chew, because even just like holding it, it's a big deck. So if you're new to tarot, this can feel a little bit overwhelming, but it's worth the time that it's going to take to get to know it, because it's a really beautiful deck. I love this deck. I love having it in my collection. I love reading for clients with it. I think there's a really powerful experience to be had with this deck. And if you don't experience that connection immediately, don't give up. This is a deck of the Sacred Feminine. The Sacred Feminine is infinite, and there are myriad representations and phases of her. So you can't just know it like that. You've got to give it some space and some time. Okay, so I really want to encourage you to, if you have this deck and you're struggling, don't give up yet. Try some of the things that I talked about in this video. See if that helps. And if you find that the deck, even though it's the entirety of the tarot structure represented now, if you find that it still wants to be, specifically a ritual deck for yourself, maybe you only use it on the moon cycles, or you only use it for ritual or at the Sabbats, that's fine too. Don't push, don't try to make it a daily deck if it's not. But I would say explore spreads with this deck, because I think it's a worthy deck for tarot readings, as well as ritual work or the work of the witch or left-hand pathers, right? So let me see if there was anything else I wanted to say there that I missed. Yes, when it comes to the 9 archetype cards, I like having them in the deck. I think that they kind of hold more of a soul journey energy for me in a read. But if you are finding that they're feeling like they're confusing you, feel free to take the 9 out, and maybe you just use the 9 during ritual to evoke a certain energy that you want to call in. Don't force yourself with the 9 if they feel sticky. But I do enjoy having them in the deck. I think that they add a depth to a reading without detracting from the structure of the tarot. We also want to remember that we are working with an expression of the sacred feminine in this deck, and so it's not, you know, it's going to be more fluid than linear, right? So I hope if you are struggling to connect with this deck, but you love it and have it in your collection, that this helps. And if you are looking at this deck and are like, oh my God, I need this deck in my collection, the link to purchase the deck on Chris's site is going to be listed below. I am sending you, as always, so much love and many blessings, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.